My name's Richard. I'm 50 years old, or I guess I was when this whole thing kicked off. And if you're wondering how someone like me ended up walking out on their family without a word, well, it wasn't one big moment. It was a slow boil. You know how they say if you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, it'll jump out immediately, but if you heat the water slowly, it'll sit there until it cooks? That was me, sitting in the pot for years. Decades, really. And the kicker? I didn't even realize the water was hot until someone handed me a crown that read King of Letdowns in front of everyone I loved, or thought I loved. Let me rewind. I've been married to my wife, Marlene, for 27 years. We met in college. She was the loud, confident one, and I was the guy who could fix your computer and grill a perfect steak. We had our daughter, Olivia, a few years after graduation, and I won't lie, she became the son my world revolved around. I wasn't the perfect dad, who is, but I was there. Every recital, every flu season, every college move-in day. I worked a stable IT job I never loved but stuck with because someone had to keep the lights on. Marlene was a stay-at-home mom who dabbled in selling essential oils and later ran a women empowerment Facebook group that mostly involved gossip and passive-aggressive Bible quotes. We had a house in the suburbs, 2 cars, a dog named Max. From the outside, we looked like one of those stock photo families. But inside, things chipped away. It started small. Marlene would interrupt me constantly, like my voice didn't matter. At first, I laughed it off. That's just how she is, I told myself. Then there were the digs. If I took a nap after work, she'd joke, "Must be nice to rest when you've done the bare minimum all day." If I forgot to pick up milk, she'd sigh and say, "You had one job." Always in that half-laughing tone, the kind that made you feel like you were being too sensitive if you got upset. I started noticing how often Olivia would roll her eyes when I tried to give her advice, or how my suggestions were always the ones ignored at family meetings, until someone else repeated them louder. I wasn't a victim, not really. I was just a placeholder, a background character in my own life. So when my 50th birthday came around, I didn't expect much. Maybe a dinner, a quiet cake, just a night where I'd feel seen. Instead, they threw a surprise party at our house. Everyone was there. Marlene's book club, Olivia's friends, even my younger brother, Jeff, who never showed up to anything unless it involved free booze. They had streamers, balloons, a Happy 5-0 banner, and a grill already prepped with ribs and burgers that I apparently was supposed to cook. No one asked me if I wanted to cook on my own birthday, but I smiled because that's what I do. The crown came out about halfway through. It was Olivia's idea, a paper Burger King-style crown, glittered in red and gold, with thick Sharpa letters that read, King of Letdowns. Everyone howled with laughter. Marlene clapped like it was the best joke she'd ever heard. Even Jeff leaned over and said, "Damn, bro, that's cold, but kinda true, right?" I laughed too. A short, stiff laugh. The kind you let out when your stomach's twisting but you don't want to make a scene. After I grilled the food, I was the one taking group pictures. "Dad, take one of us," Olivia shouted. "And one more. Make sure everyone's in it." I wasn't in a single photo that night. Not one. When it was time to cut the cake, someone shouted, "Make a wish, Rick. Wish for a personality." More laughter. My hands clenched around the knife, but I smiled again. I always smiled. Later that night, after everyone left, I was still cleaning up. Marlene was scrolling through her phone on the couch, barefoot, a drink in hand. I asked her, "Hey, did you really think the crown was funny?" She didn't even look up. Just said, "It was just a joke. Lighten up. You're so sensitive lately." That night, after she went to bed, I sat in the dark and stared at the blinking cursor on a travel website. I didn't know where I was going, just that I was going. I booked a one-way ticket to a small town in Oregon. I'd visited once on a work trip and remembered it being quiet, green, with a small diner that made the best peach cobbler I'd ever had. I didn't pack much, just clothes, my laptop, a few books, and Max. Yeah, I took the dog. No one even noticed until I was gone. I left a note. Nothing dramatic. Just, "I need to go. I don't think I've ever really been happy. Take care of yourselves. Richard." I put it on the kitchen counter with my house key. 2 weeks later, Olivia's post popped up on Facebook. A photo of us at her high school graduation, one of the rare ones where I was allowed in the frame, with a caption that read, "If anyone sees my dad, please tell him we're sorry. We didn't realize how much we took him for granted. We just want him to come home." The comments were filled with shock and sympathy. People saying things like, "He always seemed so quiet," or You never know what someone's going through. Jeff chimed in with, "Man, I miss my big bro, hope you're okay out there." The same guy who called me a doormat at least 3 times during the party. I didn't reply. Not yet. I wasn't ready. See, what they didn't know is that me leaving wasn't the end. It was just the start. The start of something they weren't expecting. I wasn't just disappearing. I was planning something. Because while I sat in that tiny Oregon diner, eating peach cobbler and watching the rain slip down the window, something inside me finally snapped into focus. All those years of being overlooked, dismissed, laughed at, they weren't going to get away with it forever. So I started writing. Not just journaling, but really writing. Everything I had done. Everything they had said. I started with a list. Every single time I had bent over backward for them. Paid off Jeff's debt. Helped Marlene's mother into a nursing home. Co-signed Olivia's car loan. All the sacrifices. And then the crown. The cake. The pictures I wasn't in. The joke I was supposed to laugh at. But the best part? I had the receipts. Literal receipts. Emails. Bank statements. Screenshots. And I knew exactly what to do with them. But that's for later. Because just when I thought I'd finally gotten the space to breathe, something happened that flipped everything again. Something I didn't see coming. And that's where things really started to spiral. 2 weeks into my self-imposed exile, I just started settling into a rhythm. Wake up early. Walk Max around the foggy streets. Brew coffee that didn't taste like burnt regret. Write. Eat. Read. Sleep. Repeat. For the first time in what felt like decades, my chest wasn't weighed down with invisible bricks. I wasn't smiling just to keep the peace. I was quiet, but it was peaceful quiet, not the suffocating kind. The town I landed in, Ashbrook, was one of those blink and you miss it places. One main street, a gas station that also sold bait, and a diner called Rosie's where the waitresses called everyone Han, and the jukebox only played music from before 1985. I rented a tiny furnished studio above an antique shop. The landlord was a retired mechanic named Daryl who reminded me of the kind of dad I always wanted, direct, but kind. He didn't ask questions when I told him I needed a place fast and paid the first 3 months in cash. It should have been enough. Just laying low, healing, figuring myself out. But then I got the email. The subject line was, "Urgent, about Dad." It was from Olivia. I stared at it for hours before I clicked it. My finger hovered over the trackpad, heart pounding, Max's tail thumping lazily beside me like a metronome. When I finally opened it, the first line was, "Please don't delete this." She said she didn't understand at first, that the party had just seemed like harmless fun, a little roast to lighten the mood, that she didn't realize the crown would hurt me, that she thought I always took jokes well. She apologized. Not for the first time. Apparently, she said she'd been calling, texting, posting, but this was the first time she didn't try to justify it. The email ended with, "You were always the one holding us together, and we let you become invisible. I'm sorry, Dad. I miss you." I didn't reply. Not because I didn't feel anything, but because I felt too much. So I just saved the email and went back to my writing. Because by that point, the revenge plan was already in motion. I don't mean petty revenge. Not slashing tires or draining joint accounts. I mean clean, undeniable consequences. I wanted them to understand what they'd lost, not just emotionally, but practically, financially, socially. I'd built more of their lives than they realized, and now I was going to let them feel what happened when I stopped. The first thing I did was call our financial advisor, Dale. We'd worked with him for years. I told him, calmly, that I wanted to remove my name from all joint accounts and transfer my investments to a new individual portfolio under my name only. He paused. "Richard, you sure? That's a big step." "I'm sure." "Does Marlene know?" "She will." The second thing I did was contact the mortgage company. The house was technically in both our names, but I'd been the sole payer for the last 15 years. I had the bank records to prove it. I stopped the automatic payments. Same for the utilities. I knew Marlene didn't even know how to log into the billing portals. I'd set them up and maintained them all myself. She hadn't paid a single bill since 2007. I gave it 3 days. On the 4th, my phone, finally powered on again, buzzed with 20 missed calls from her number and 3 voicemails. I didn't listen to them. I just blocked the number. Then came the Facebook messages. First from Jeff. "Yo bro, we gotta talk. Everything's falling apart. Call me." Then from her. "What are you doing? This isn't funny anymore. Come home. We need to figure this out." And finally, a public post. "Marlene, ever the queen of vague drama, Posted. When someone you love chooses to abandon their family instead of talking like an adult, it says more about them than you. Cue the flood of sympathetic comments from her church friends and MLM squad. But what struck me were the comments underneath those. Quiet ones. From people I barely remembered. A former coworker of mine. I always thought Rich deserved better. Hope he's doing what's best for him. Another. I saw what happened at that birthday party. It wasn't okay. Marlene deleted the post within hours. But then the real unraveling began. Jeff, who had come to rely on me bailing him out of everything from credit card debt to car repairs, suddenly found himself denied when he applied for a loan. Turns out, cosigners matter. Olivia's car loan payments were still being drafted from the joint account until they weren't. Her next payment bounced. I wasn't being cruel. I just stopped carrying weight no one acknowledged. The tipping point came 2 weeks after the birthday party. I got a certified letter forwarded from our old address to my studio in Ashbrook. It was from Marlene's lawyer. She was filing for separation, but not just that. She was claiming emotional abandonment, seeking alimony, and trying to argue that since she had been a stay-at-home mother, she was entitled to the majority of our assets. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. Because I knew something she didn't. I've been documenting everything for years. Not out of malice, just out of habit. Every tax return. Every check, every tuition bill, even every time I fixed her mother's leaky roof or rewired the laundry room. I hired my own lawyer, a quiet, methodical guy named Arthur who loved facts more than drama. When I met him, I handed him a thick folder of documents and a USB drive. He whistled. "This is thorough." "I'm an IT guy," I said. "I back things up." Arthur grinned. We built the case carefully, not to destroy her, but to expose the truth. That I had been the sole financial provider, the emotional load bearer, the one who had kept the entire machine running while being mocked, minimized, and dismissed. But even as we prepared, a small part of me still hoped for something different. A letter, a real apology, something that showed she understood, not just that I was gone, but why. Instead, I got a phone call from Olivia. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was shaky. "Dad, things are getting really bad here. Mom's been freaking out. She's trying to sell the house, but it turns out she can't without your signature. Jeff's staying with us and they're fighting constantly. I don't even feel safe. Please call me." And then she whispered, like she didn't want anyone to hear, "I think I'm starting to understand why you left." I sat there, staring at the phone. Max lifted his head and looked at me, like he was waiting for a command. That was the moment. The turning point. Because now, for the first time, someone wasn't just begging me to come back. They were starting to see the truth. And that meant it was time to take the next step. Time to show them what happens when you push someone too far, and they finally push back. I played that voicemail back a few times, each word settling differently in my chest. Olivia's voice wasn't the chipper, dismissive tone I'd gotten used to, the one she used when she called me extra or told me to stop being so old-fashioned. No, this time it was soft, raw, like she was finally peeling back the layers. But it didn't change the plan. See, I knew the kind of person Marlene was. She wasn't the scream and throw things type. She was worse. The quiet manipulator. The professional victim. She had this uncanny ability to spin everything just enough that people doubted themselves. You didn't even realize she was gaslighting you until you were knee-deep in guilt over something she did. I hadn't just walked away from a marriage. I'd escaped a psychological maze. And now, watching her world slowly fall apart without me holding the beams up, it wasn't satisfying in the way revenge usually is in movies. It was clarifying. But Olivia was different. At least I wanted to believe she was. And the voicemail? That was the first breadcrumb. I wasn't ready to call her back, but I did something I hadn't done since I left. I sent a reply. Just a text. "I heard your message. I'm okay. I'm not ready to come back, but I'm listening." No response for hours. Then, "Thank you. Just knowing that helps." Small step, but a step. Meanwhile, things on Marlene's side were unraveling faster than even I predicted. The next move in the game came when Arthur, the lawyer, filed a formal motion to contest the financial claims in the separation filing. We attached copies of my pay stubs from the last 20 years, a breakdown of every expense covered solely by me, and my favorite part, a year-by-year log of the money I funneled into Jeff's black hole of debt. Marlene had claimed I'd been emotionally absent for years. Arthur countered with birthday videos, vacation photos, text messages, and even therapy invoices where I'd paid for Olivia's counseling after a high school breakup. He built the case like a house of cards, one brick of proof after another until the foundation of her story started to shake. I wasn't trying to win custody. There was no child involved. I didn't want the house. I didn't even want revenge in the financial sense. I just wanted the truth to be undeniable. I wanted her to stand in court and have to explain why she thought a man who did everything for his family deserved a crown that called him a failure. Word started to spread among the extended family. My cousin Teresa reached out. I always thought Marlene was intense. We just didn't say anything. A couple of Olivia's old teachers sent me private messages on Facebook. You were always at parent-teacher night. Never missed one. Some kids don't have that. Olivia was lucky. Funny how people see things in hindsight. One morning, about 6 weeks after the party, I got an email from Marlene herself. Not through a lawyer, just her. The subject line was empty. The body of the email said, "I miss you. Even now, I don't understand why you didn't just tell me how you were feeling." That line, that single sentence, it set something off inside me. Because I did tell her. 1,000 times in 1,000 ways. Through tired eyes and long sighs. Through standing in the rain with a flat tire while she stayed warm at home. Through late-night grocery runs when Olivia was sick and Marlene was too tired. Through giving up my dream of starting my own business because her essential oil store needed funding. But I never yelled. I never accused. I never made a scene. So to her, I never said anything at all. I didn't reply to the email. I just forwarded it to Arthur. "She's still not getting it," I wrote. And then, just when I thought things couldn't twist any harder, Olivia showed up. It was a Saturday morning, rainy like always, and I was coming back from the diner with a box of leftover biscuits for Max. I saw the rental car parked crooked in front of the antique store. And then I saw her, leaning against the hood, hoodie up, arms crossed, same expression she had when she was a teenager, and I told her she couldn't go to a concert on a school night. I stopped in my tracks. She looked up. "Hey, hey." Max let out a soft bark and trotted over to her. She knelt down and scratched his head. He remembers me. He's got a better memory than most people. She flinched. Just a little. Then she stood up. "I didn't tell Mom I was coming," she said. I had to see you. I didn't know what to say. So I just motioned for her to follow me up to the studio. We sat in silence for a while. I offered her coffee, and she took it. Black, no sugar, just like I drink mine. It made me smile a little. "Finally," she said, "I didn't get it before. Not really. I thought you were just being dramatic, leaving like that." But now, she stared into the coffee. "Now Mom cries every day, but not because she misses you. Because the credit card bills are piling up. Because Jeff won't stop drinking in the basement. Because the house is cold and she doesn't know how to reset the thermostat." She looked at me. "She misses the benefits of you, not you." I didn't say anything. I just let her talk. And I think I was starting to turn into her. She whispered, "Making fun of you. Dismissing everything. I didn't realize how much I took you for granted until you were just gone." She looked around the small space, books piled on the desk, Max curled up on the rug, a half-finished jigsaw puzzle on the coffee table. "It's not much," she said, "but it feels more like a home than our place ever did." That got to me. I leaned back, arms crossed, unsure of how to respond. I didn't want to comfort her. Not yet. I wanted her to sit in that discomfort, because that's what I had done for years. But then she asked something I wasn't ready for. "Are you coming back?" I looked out the window, rain tapping gently on the glass. A slow breath in, a slow breath out. "I don't know," I said, "but I'm not done yet." She didn't press. She just nodded, then stood up. Before she left, she paused at the door. "I hope, someday, I earn the chance to be part of your life again." And then she was gone. I stood there for a long time. The next morning, I called Arthur. "It's time," I said. "Let's go to court." What happened next? Well, it changed everything. 3 months later, I stood outside the courthouse in my one decent suit, the same one I wore to Olivia's graduation, back when I thought everything I did mattered. My palms were dry, my breathing steady. Funny, I thought I'd be nervous, but I wasn't. Not anymore. I wasn't the man who laughed off insults and apologized for existing. I'd taken 3 decades of being sidelined and turned it into something sharper, something stronger. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my voice. The courtroom wasn't packed, just a few bored lawyers, a sleepy court clerk, and across the aisle, Marlene. She was dressed like a widow in a Hallmark movie, black dress, fake tears, and all. She looked at me with a mix of contempt and desperation, like she couldn't decide if I was the villain who'd ruined her life or the tool she'd lost and suddenly needed again. When the judge asked us to speak, her lawyer went first. He painted a picture of a man who abandoned his family without notice, of a woman who had sacrificed her career for the household, and of a daughter left emotionally wounded. Marlene even dabbed her eyes at that part. I kept my face blank. Then Arthur stood up. He wasn't flashy, just deliberate. He walked the court through the timeline. The years of financial support, documented in meticulous spreadsheets. The text messages, photos, and family events I had organized and paid for. The debt I took on to cover Jeff's messes. The tuition, the car loan, the groceries, the bills. He showed the court the king of Letdowns crown. Yes, we submitted it as evidence, and read aloud the text messages and social posts that followed. And then he said the line that stuck with everyone. My client didn't abandon his family. He simply stopped participating in a performance where he was always the punchline and never the star. Marlene tried to interrupt, something about context and just a joke, but the judge cut her off. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. The house would be sold, and the proceeds split 70/30, heavily skewed toward me due to documented financial contribution. Marlene's request for alimony was denied, citing lack of effort to gain employment despite a healthy, able-bodied status. The court also found her claims of emotional abandonment unsupported by any evidence other than subjective testimony. Jeff was ordered to repay the $18,000 I had covered for his debts. I knew I'd never see that money, but it was never about that. It was about the record, about finally having someone say, on paper, that what I gave mattered. After the hearing, Marlene caught up to me in the hallway. "This isn't fair," she hissed, her voice shaking. "You made me look like a monster." I looked her straight in the eyes for the first time in years. "You didn't need my help with that." She flinched like I'd slapped her, then turned and walked away. A week later, I signed the final documents and officially transferred my name off the house. I wired Olivia the money to finish paying off her car, but with a condition: she needed to manage her own payments going forward. She accepted without argument. We stayed in touch. Not every day, not even every week. But she started calling, not to ask for anything, just to talk, to tell me about her day, her job, her thoughts. Once, she even asked for advice. That one nearly made me cry. I stayed in Ashbrook. I still walk Max every morning, drink diner coffee, and read books I never had time for. I got a part-time job fixing old electronics at a repair shop. It doesn't pay much, but it pays enough. More importantly, it doesn't cost me myself. One evening, Olivia visited again. She brought peach cobbler from Rosie's and sat on my porch, feet dangling off the edge. "You're not who I thought you were," she said quietly. "You're more. I just didn't see it until you stopped letting us walk all over you." I nodded. I wasn't angry when I left. I was just done. "I'm glad you were," she said, "because now I get to actually meet you." The sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows on the street below. "You think you'll ever move back?" she asked. I smiled and shook my head. "I'm already home." Because home, I finally understood, isn't where people expect you to be. It's where you get to be yourself. And for the first time in 50 years, I finally was.